all you glorious gamers out there. Welcome to the PlayersToo Podcast, the video game podcast for gamers like you, by gamers like you. You can find PlayersToo on all the social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com. That's PlayerStoo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, that really helps us out. It does a huge amount for the exposure of the show. And while you're over there, if you could leave us 5 stars as well, that just helps us out even more. Again, thank you to anyone that's already done that for us. You're an absolute legend to us. Alright, and on with the show. My name is Mark Henderson, and joining me for this Gamescom special is Mr. Lewis Camley. How's it going, Lewis?
Going very well, Mark. Good to see you as ever. How are you getting on?
Not bad. Just finished watching Jeff Keighley's opening night live, and I'm very ready to talk about some video games, Lewis.
Very good, yeah, me too. It's been quite an intense, long day, but I'm glad to finish it with some video games as ever.
Absolutely. We're going to skip right over what we've been playing this week. Lewis has been playing basically nothing because his work has not allowed him to do so. And I am still dabbling in weird EA Sport, well, not weird EA Sports games, they're the biggest sports games in the world, but they're weird to me.
Little
because
games
I'm
you
so
might not
alien.
have heard of.
Yeah, like FIFA and Madden. But yeah, weird to me, and me sort of dipping my toe into that side of video games again and finding that it's horrible and disgusting. Anyway, Lewis, on to our Gamescom special. Alright, listen, starting things off with the Xbox presentation that took place yesterday. And they opened their presentation with Dying Light 2, which is coming on December the 7th. We got a little bit more gameplay. Nothing particularly interesting, to be honest with you. Felt as if we'd seen a lot of that before. They did talk about how you can use your parkour moves in the combat, but nothing major, really. Then after that, they spoke about Microsoft Flight Simulator at length. They spoke about their free Top Gun DLC, which is coming in tandem with the movie, obviously. And there is an update coming to sort of Central Europe, the sort of Germany region, which is where Gamescom is held. So I think that was something that they wanted to highlight there. And they're bringing air racing and sort of competitive multiplayer to the game as well. After that, they announced that Games Pass and Humble Games of Humble Bundle are also doing a collaboration to bring those games over onto Games Pass, which is very, very cool. After that, they showed off Into the Pit, which is basically a riff on Doom 2016/Doom Eternal. I thought it looked quite good for what it was. It was using sort of magic rather than the mad Doom guns, but they were using mad magic instead, so, you know, that works. That's coming on October the 19th. After that was Age of Empires 4, and we got a long history lesson on the trebuchet, Lewis, on the trebuchet, which was an interesting choice, I thought. It's coming on October the 28th. Again, I'm sort of making fun of that, but it was about getting the history into the games, which I think is quite cool. I always thought that was an interesting thing that Ubisoft did with their Assassin's Creed games and whatever. But it did not have to go on for as long as it did in this presentation, and I think that will be a running theme Xbox.
It did seem to be, I wasn't watching the presentation live, but I did see the kind of reactions on Twitter, and everyone was making gags about the trebuchet, so it did seem to be the standout moment.
Oh, really? To be completely honest with you, I'm coming into this quite raw. I've not seen a huge amount of reaction to this, so I'm glad that wasn't just me that thought that was stupid. After that, listen, possibly one of the biggest announcements of this showcase, which has nothing to do with a game, is about Xbox Cloud Gaming coming to consoles in holiday 2021. They're aiming for a stream of 1080p 60 FPS. Now, a lot of people might be thinking, well, what is the point in bringing cloud gaming to consoles? But I think it's to allow people to just jump into things quite quickly. But also, it allows you to play through xCloud and Games Pass. It allows you to play next-gen games on last-gen consoles. So my old Xbox One X should be able to play next-gen games through xCloud, which is mad. And to be honest with you, Xbox keep on making it harder and harder for me to buy a Series X. Why are they doing this? I want to buy one. Stop making me content with my Xbox One.
Yeah, this is a big news story in a lot of ways. I think we've talked about it before, this idea that eventually xCloud would come to console and what it means. But yeah, this guarantees then that games that are currently, even right now, only available on Series X will be playable on last-gen consoles. It poses an interesting question as to why you would upgrade. I guess, as we covered a little bit before, the reason that you wouldn't necessarily want to rely on xCloud is that the latency that would come into certain games, that not every game is going to play as well as you might want it to. But obviously, in the little trailer for this, they were highlighting games like Celeste, which is very important, like the latency and the input lag
specifically bring up the latency exactly with Celeste. So yeah, obviously that's a point they know is something that's contentious, you know.
But at its core, the idea that if you've got a Game Pass subscription and you can just very quickly jump into any game on the system or on the service, without having to download it, without having to install it. And particularly, I think, for those games where it's just, your friend has said to you, oh, I think you'd like this, give it a try. You can be playing it within seconds. You don't even have to wait for a few gigabytes to download or whatever, or take up space or manage your hard drive space. That's a really liberating thing for a lot of gamers, and I think that it will become quite a big thing in the years to come.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm thinking about right now, as you were saying that, is that theoretically, anyway, assuming that you had the bandwidth in your internet, you could be downloading a game and start it on xCloud. Do you know what I mean? And through the wonders of Xbox and their cross saves everywhere. Do you know what I mean? Like, you would be able to then just jump back in when the game's like fully downloaded on your hard drive, but you wouldn't have that lead-in time, which can depend on the game, can be hours.
Definitely. Yeah.
So really interesting announcement there. After that was Wastelanders 3, Cult of the Holy Detonation DLC, which is coming on October the 5th. Then was Stray Blade, which was a new game so far as I'm aware anyway, coming in 2022. It gives me sort of Dark Souls vibes in terms of its combat, e.g. they said themselves that it would be of a high skill base, e.g. is going to be difficult, but it was a bit less serious. It wasn't taking itself very seriously in terms of its tone and whatever. In terms of the environments as well, it seemed to be a lot more of sort of natural environments. You know what I mean? There was a lot of like woods and green spaces and whatever. But I actually thought it looked quite cool. They were also emphasising exploration as well. Something to keep an eye on, I would say, Lewis. I thought it looked pretty good.
Yeah, it feels a little bit to me like these kind of Souls riffs are a bit dime a dozen, but this one looked alright. Like you say, that slightly more kind of outdoorsy, slightly brighter and lighter version of Dark Souls, which can be...
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that can be one of the things that puts people off. The first time I ever remember seeing Dark Souls, years and years ago now, I was a bit like, oh God, it's just very...
gritty and grey and brown
and intense and extremely moody. And so this just looked like a slightly sort of leavened version of that.
Yeah, definitely something to keep your eye on. Again, it could turn into nothing with these sort of smaller titles as always, but something to keep your eye on. After that was Crusader Kings 3 coming to Games Pass as an adaptation rather than a port from PC. E.g., the game and the UI are now going to be updated to work well, apparently, with controllers and not need a mouse and keyboard. No release date at this time, but obviously when the game first came out, it actually reviewed incredibly well. And Lewis, I think this is something that you were quite interested in.
It is indeed, yeah, and like you say, it did review massively well at the time.
Exceptionally well.
Especially considering the type of game that it is. It's a big real-time strategy, tactics-based game. It's heavily story-driven in terms of creating your own little narratives and like the dynasty of your kingdom and all that kind of stuff. I mean, a bit like Age of Empires, whatever, you get these games and they usually have big fan bases, but they don't really cross over into the kind of critical realm, and Crusader Kings 3 really did. I have it installed on my PC, and the one thing that kind of stops me playing it is just that I have to be sat at my PC to play it, and it feels like you need a lot of time to invest in that. So if they've nailed the console adaptation, and I quite like that we're using that language for this, I think that could be great, because it feels like the kind of game that you might want to, because of the time that it takes, you might want to be lying on your couch playing it a bit more than you want to be sat in front of a monitor for hours on end, But it's really tricky to get these things right, I think, and that will be the kicker for it all.
Do you know what this is, mate? This is a real candidate for an xCloud game, because latency will not be an issue.
Yep, absolutely, yep.
After that, Lewis, was Psychonauts 2. This actually came out this week, or the reviews certainly came out this week anyway. This from Tim Schafer and Double Fine. It's currently sitting with an 87 on Series X and an 89 on PC. The game is also available for PS4, but let's face it, it's an Xbox game these days. It's reviewed really well, man. It's reviewed really, really well. People are responding super positively for it. I know that it has a bit of a cult following anyway, but I wasn't expecting review scores quite this high, but yeah, they seem to have absolutely fucking nailed it.
Yeah, it's great to see these review scores, because it's the kind of game that it could have gone either way. It's been floating around in the ether for quite a long time, and finally it's here. I think it is releasing today as we record this, actually, and so it's, people will be able to get their hands on it. The trailers have all looked really fun. The first one kind of passed me by, but it's one of those games that you hear people talking about a lot, and the excitement for the second one has been building, and what they do at Double Fine just seems to be like really fun, pretty well made games, and this looks like it's just tapping into that nice kind of action platformer vein that that we've been enjoying recently with something like It Takes Two, but that are just always enjoyable games to play.
Yeah, absolutely. I like Tim Schafer a lot. I think he comes across as a genuinely good dude, you know. Yeah, and a massive congratulations. Yeah, the game seems to have done really, really well indeed. After that, Lewis, was The Gunk. I have to say, the first time I saw this game, honestly, I thought it was bad. But actually, I thought in this trailer, it looked way, way, way better. I don't know what the hell happened with that first trailer, but this made it look so much better that it's coming on December the 21st. I think you were a bit more excited for it than me, though.
I definitely was on the first look at it. I mean, I wasn't massively excited, but if anyone goes back to listen to those old episodes, I just thought that the name was good and would stick and work quite well. But yeah, this kind of looks like a sort of 3D action adventure crossover with Luigi's Mansion, and I don't know, I think it's got something there. I think it looks interesting and fun enough. Hard to say yet exactly kind of what they're pitching it at, but we've been talking a lot before about how Xbox needs quite family friendly games, and this looks like one that could really tie into that. So I think it's good to get this update, and yeah, nice that they've put out a trailer that is a bit more reassuring than the first one was for you, at least.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I have to admit, after the first trailer, I was like, nah, I'm out on this. I'm not really interested in it at all, frankly. Do you know what? Actually, I'm keeping an eye on this. You know what I mean? It's one of those ones to keep an eye on now. Then they finished the showcase with an extended look at Forza Horizon 5, and it was a long look, I have to say. They showed the cover of the game for the first time. They also announced a new controller. They had 8 minutes of gameplay, and to be honest, this game looks fantastic, particularly like visually stunning, like really ridiculously good looking. I'm not sure that I needed 8 minutes of gameplay in this presentation. But the game in and of itself did look quite good. Lewis, I have to say, and by the way, we're both using physical notes, so if you hear paper sounds during the podcast, that is what that is. Physical notes during big presentations seems to be the winner. But Lewis, I think that the main headlines from this presentation are the things that weren't there, not the things that were there, you know what I mean? We got no release date for Halo, which was widely touted as happening, and spoiler alert, we do get that at Opening Night Live, but not at Xbox's own presentation. But no Hellblade 2, no Avowed, no Bright Memory Infinite, no Scorn, no Outer Worlds 2, no Fable, no Perfect Dark, no Bethesda games at all. Which makes me think maybe Xbox and Bethesda are operating still independently somewhat, but I'm sort of surprised that they never filtered something from Bethesda in here, you know. But yeah, a lot of stuff that I wanted to see wasn't there, frankly.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the reaction, as you were saying, you weren't paying attention to the reaction to it, and that was kind of all I saw as it was happening, and a lot of people were a bit put out because as much as they can set expectations, and I'm not really sure what they had said in advance in terms of managing expectations.
To be fair, Aaron Greenberg had come out and said we're not getting any like big announcements, but we'll be getting updates and la. But all of them would have qualified as updates. We were expecting the Halo date, which we did get Opening Night Live, but not at this presentation, which I think was disappointing and also a bit of a weird choice, frankly. But to be fair to them, they did do some preemptive damage control.
But at the same time, the Xbox name commands attention, and they will have had people tuning in and making time to watch what was quite a long show altogether.
Oh, so long. Man, honestly, this could have been 45 minutes. This could have been a tight 45 minutes, pretty good show, but instead it was an hour and a half. Yeah. There was no need for that at all.
And if they'd kind of said, it's mostly indie partners and, updates on one or two of our bigger games like Forza, I guess, is the big thing there. I mean, it really does feel to me like it pivots, and all the news that was coming out of it last night was really about the xCloud announcement, which, as you were saying, has nothing to do with an actual game. I don't really understand why they did this as well, is that none of the other big publishers were doing it. So it's the kind of presentation that you might see a company do if Sony were also doing like a state of play this week, and Nintendo had the Direct, or Square were doing a thing, or Ubisoft were doing a thing. And as far as I'm aware, not really anyone else has announced anything. So it just seems really odd that Xbox chose to jump on this and then not really deliver very much.
Yeah, it is a bit of a weird one, man. I don't think it was a great presentation. I thought Xbox would really come over the hill a little bit with their E3 presentation, which I thought was really great. I thought that was a really good presentation, whereas this was slow, and they were doing a lot of developer chatting, which is fine if you're doing a deep dive or something like that, but I mean, the Wastelanders 3 DLC and the State of Decay 2 DLC, did we really need a sit down for the devs with that at this time, at this showcase? For me, absolutely not. By the way, I'm not by any means saying that PlayStation or Nintendo, frankly, have had stellar showcases recently, but man, I really don't feel as if they drag as much as the Xbox ones do. The indie stuff as well. I love that they dedicate so much time to indie games at their idea Xbox things, but my God, those shows drag on. They really do. And there's just no need for it, There's no need for it at all. Anyway, Lewis, moving on to opening night live, the big one with Jeff Keighley, and it opened with Saints Row. This is a reboot of the series. We got a reveal trailer, which was a pretty fun reveal trailer, I thought. I mean, it's very in line with Saints Row, I suppose, isn't it? We even got a release date. It's coming on February the 25th, 2022. I would very much suspect that might shift a bit. Yep. But we did get some gameplay as well, and basically it just looked like a modern day Saints Row, really, didn't it?
Pretty much, yeah. Just a sort of freshened up version of what was becoming a bit of a stale series, I guess. My first thought looking at it was basically it's GTA done with sort of Fortnite style graphics, and
yeah, but that was always the thing. It was they were fun GTA.
Exactly, yeah. Like, and that's in that graphical style with that sort of look. It's like you say, it's the modern thing. It's keeping it in line with what other people are doing and other people are enjoying at the moment. So it's not something that remotely interests me, I've got to say. I don't imagine I'll be playing this.
Really, to be honest. Yeah, I think for both of us, we just sort of missed that series a little bit.
Totally, yeah. And we were both into GTA particularly, which
everybody was into GTA though. You can't,
No,
everybody
well,
was
but
into
the
GTA.
earlier GTAs, I suppose. I mean, like there was never a need to go and play Saints Row because we still had those,
Yeah, I suppose that's true. But anyway, this was something that I know a lot of people were excited for, so I'm definitely glad it was showing off.
Yeah.
I'd leaked a little bit beforehand. I think a lot of people knew that this was coming, but good to see anyway. Speaking of things that leaked beforehand, Lewis, Marvel's Midnight Suns. This is by 2K and Firaxis, meaning that it is the rumoured Marvel's XCOM game, which is very, very cool. It's coming in 2022. It had a very bad rendition of Enter Sandman over the top of it, Lewis. I really hated it. But anyway, moving swiftly on from that, it also included a new superhero from Marvel called the Hunter, who is effectively the player character, which is pretty cool for your game. I would say that you've got Marvel to create a new superhero for you. But Lewis, you've got to be interested in this, surely.
I absolutely am. This is one that I've been waiting for. We heard of this being rumoured or being leaked a few months ago, and I think we all expected to see something about it at E3, and then it didn't happen. And I'd actually sort of forgotten about it when I started watching Opening Night Live today, and to see it, to get it properly announced, I thought the trailer was, a CG trailer, not a gameplay trailer, obviously, but was really well done, was better looking and more interesting than any of the Marvel's Avengers game stuff has been up to this point.
So much more interesting. Jesus Christ. I thought that they'd done a fantastic... I mean, they've got that Disney money, but
yeah,
it didn't matter with Square Enix's Marvel's Avengers, so...
Yeah, they made it look interesting. They made the characters look good. Like you say, they've put in a new hero that it sounds like you'll be able to customize or kind of make your own in different ways. They talked a little bit after the trailer about the ways that like relationships between characters will be just as important as the items that you bring in and all that kind of thing, which is a slight tweak on the XCOM formula, I suppose, but maybe like brings in some of that slightly deeper RPG mechanic stuff that is, massive across almost every genre of gaming right now. And it keeps you, the player, there and invested in the characters. So for me, this coming in March might be a little birthday game for Lewis. I'm excited. I think they said that there's more gameplay coming in September 1st possibly. I'm really keen to see a bit more of this and see what it's all about. And I'm saying that as someone who's like not massively a Marvel fan at all. It's just the
you're a Firaxis fan.
Added to this. Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. Yeah.
No, that is pretty cool, man. Do you think Chimera Squad was a bit of a dry run for this?
I mean, personally, I hope so, and I can imagine that it will be, because, I mean, one of the key differences between Chimera Squad and XCOM 1 and 2 is the lack of permadeath and the fact that you had named characters who you couldn't lose in a battle. If they got killed, if your whole squad got killed, you got a game over state and that you begin again. You cannot imagine that Marvel is going to allow any of their heroes to be perma-killed in this game.
Not.
So I think it's
None
that.
of them are going to die.
And Chimera Squad allowed you to add character stories into the broader world story of the XCOM universe, and so you can imagine again that you'll get the big overarching plot of the Marvel stuff, and then you'll get these independent like one-on-one character stories, which is what Marvel can also do really well. It's kind of what the MCU does really well. So yeah, I think this is ticking a lot of boxes for me.
Cool, nice one, man. Alright, Lewis, after that was Call of Duty Vanguard. This had leaked a week or so ago, to be honest, and it is now confirmed to be coming on November the 5th. They did say that on day one there would be 20 maps for the multiplayer, which is pretty cool. Then we also got to see a lot of gameplay. This is another one that really did drag on a bit. I don't think that it quite needed to show as much gameplay as it did, but honestly, it's typical Call of Duty. It's went back to that World War II style that we've seen a lot now. It's Call of Duty, man. I don't really know what to say about it apart from that.
No. What we saw looked interesting, I thought, but yeah, it's just more Call of Duty, really.
Yep, it's simply the next Call of Duty. All right, Lewis. After that was Halo Infinite. This was the Halo Infinite release date announcement that we were expecting to get at the Xbox conference. We also got a little cinematic as well. They introduced like the first season of the multiplayer a little bit. But most importantly, they confirmed that the campaign and the multiplayer would be releasing together, and they would be releasing on December the 8th. Which is a little bit further out than I was thinking, but I wonder if they're just trying to definitely hit that holiday window, like on the run up to Christmas, and avoid Call of Duty and Battlefield, sort of. Like, I wonder if that's really what they're going for. They did also release a limited edition console for Halo, and because it's the 20th anniversary, which I believe is the first limited edition next-gen console as well, which is quite cool.
Yeah, great to finally have the date confirmed for Halo, and I think really good and really positive that both elements, both the campaign and the multiplayer, are coming together. I know there's been a lot of debate about whether they were intended to come separately or whether they sort of would naturally come separately because of like the console release window and then the delays and all that stuff. But to me, putting out both parts at once means the absolute maximum number of players are going to jump into that, and that's particularly for the multiplayer side. That's exactly what Halo needs. It's what Xbox needs. And yeah, I totally agree with what you were saying there. It feels later than I was expecting it. I thought it would be November. I'm pretty certain the original Xbox launched in November, and I thought they would tie all the anniversary stuff in together. But yeah, they're going to want to avoid a big Call of Duty that we just saw with Vanguard. They're going to want to avoid Battlefield, which looks like it's kind of on the ascendancy again with the new game. Yeah, they're not going to worry about sales at all. As long as they can get consoles out and people can buy them and they can flog those Game Pass subscriptions, Mark, that's all that matters.
Well, they've got pretty good at it these days, Liz. Alright, after that was Cult of Lamb, this by Digital Devolver and Massive Monster. It is a roguelike game with sort of cutesy graphics, but it's clearly quite dark. Looks like a cross between Hades and Animal Crossing a little bit. Interesting, basically because it's Devolver and they're always mad. It's something to keep your eye on, I'd say. Then after that was Midnight Express, and this was made by one developer apparently, which, if you see the trailer for the game, is incredibly impressive, I think, anyway. It's coming in the summer of 2022. It sort of looked, well, it was absolutely wild, to be honest, but it looked like a sort of isometric Sifu. Do you think that's fair to say? I think
definitely, yeah. As soon as it started playing, my head went to John Wick, and I just thought it's that kind of choreographed action, but yeah, like with a sort of isometric top-down view. Yeah, just looks like a totally chaotic brawler. I thought something about it was really interesting. Keen to see more.
Yeah, definitely. After that was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. This is the side-scrolling Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that sort of pays homage to those old-school Ninja Turtles games, much in the same vein as Streets of Rage. This was basically just revealing a new character. Then after that was Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania. This is the 20th anniversary game / collection / remake of Super Monkey Ball. They have released a whole bunch of guest characters to go into the game as well, and they have now released Morgana from Persona 5, which is pretty cool. It's another Sega franchise. It makes a lot of sense. And the game is coming out on October the 5th. After that list was Splitgate. This game has apparently had more than 10 million players across all platforms, which is incredibly impressive. The new season has shadow dropped here as well, called Season 0, and will include new maps and new modes. This is the game, if you don't know as well, that is basically a free-to-play multiplayer arena shooter with portals. That seems to be the thing.
That is very much the thing, yeah. It essentially rips off the portals from the game Portal, but...
Oh, certainly. I mean, it's blatant.
But if you check out any footage of this game, I mean, some of the kills that people are getting are so inventive with their use of that portal mechanic. I have a bunch of friends who have kind of been trying out recently that, you know, normally play things like Apex Legends, and they've been trying this out, and I think they've been having a fair bit of fun with it. I think there was a lot of issues with the lobbies and getting connected to games at the start. Of course there are. That's just the nature of things, and I don't think this is coming
pretty
from
small studio as well, so I don't think that lends itself to great servers, unfortunately.
But this is the kind of thing that the FPS genre can do, that can actually get someone like me who is not interested remotely get my attention, because if you put something like this in, if you really vary the formula a bit, that's when I would pay attention to it. And this, the number of players they're talking about is really, really impressive, and I hope it does well.
10 million, man. I mean, fuck me, that is very impressive. Yep. That is not to be scoffed at all. Alright, Liz, after that was Riders Republic. Ubisoft are marketing this hard, and I just don't think an open world extreme sports game is a very good idea. I think that is pretty fucking niche, and the game really doesn't look particularly special in any capacity. But there is a beta open from now until the 28th of August, and the game is coming on October the 28th. You were a wee bit more on side for this than I was. Like, I've consistently said I don't think this is going to work, but I thought Knockout City was going to be a disaster, and that turned out alright, so...
Yeah, I don't think it's a terrible idea. I think there is a fan base out there for it. It needs to play well. I think I was saying this before. It has to feel good. If it doesn't, no one will stick with it, and it'll die on its arse, basically. If I wasn't so busy with work just now, I would check out this beta just to see, because that will settle the debate for me there and then if it's going to work or not, but I'm probably not going to manage it this week.
After that list was UFL, this by Strikers Inc. We didn't really get to see much of the game at all. It was more a teaser trailer, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's another free-to-play football game. I'm not sure how much hope this game is going to have in the face of FIFA specifically. And, I mean, if Pro Ev couldn't get licenses, then this game has no hope at all, frankly. So I'm not really sure how they're going to deal with that. But they say that this will be a sim. This is going to be a football sim. It's going to be free-to-play. It's going the same way as PES or eFootball as it is now. I like seeing that this is the direction that things are going, because again, with my recent experience of EA Sports games, I think that having an annualized release with changes that are so negligible year to year that it is totally redundant.
Yeah, it'll definitely be tricky for this game to have any sort of impact or staying power, I think. But if it can get the gameplay right, again, it might not matter so much about the licenses. It's never going to hit a massive fan base. But if it can play better than FIFA, then you might get some people who really love football jumping ship to it. Who knows? One that I want to keep an eye on, certainly.
Yeah, definitely. After that list was Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, meaning that you get to play through all 9 movies. I always think that Lego games look absolutely fucking fantastic for what they are, frankly. I think that they have really good humour. I think that their audience, which is kids, let's be honest, really respond very well to them. I think that they play well for what they are as well. Coming in spring 2022, honestly, I thought it looked great. Again, for what it is, I thought it looked fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Sort of polished up versions of the previous ones that have been released in this series, and it'll hit its mark. It's going to do just fine, and it did look really, really enjoyable.
Absolutely. Next was Sync Off Planet, this from a Chinese dev called Next Studio. It seems to be an interesting concept for a shooter. A lot of nanomachine talk going on.
A lot of nanos, yeah.
Yeah, but they didn't actually say a lot about what the game was. At a glance, it looked relatively interesting, one to keep an eye on, nothing to get overly excited about. After that was the Outlast Trials, launching in 2022. It looked pretty fucking terrifying, Lewis, I'm not going to lie to you. This is obviously a part of the wider Outlast franchise. Not really sure what the game is from the trailer that was shown, if I'm totally honest with you. Obviously it has multiplayer elements to it. Obviously it has a lot of zombies. Obviously it has a lot of making you shit yourself.
That's all you need.
That's a horror game, right? That's a modern horror game. After that was Doke V, and good heavens, Lewis, the studio is from South Korea, but I think it is fair to say that this game is anime as fuck, Lewis. You seem to play as a bunch of kids fighting monsters and generally just dicking around. I actually thought that the game visually looked pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah, it really
This
did.
gameplay trailer did go on for a long time, but I did think that it looked pretty good, and actually I thought the gameplay looked pretty good as well. I'm not sure how much I'm interested in this, to be completely honest with you, but it looked, I thought anyway, like quite impressive.
Yeah, visually really, really impressive, like surprisingly good looking.
I'm stunned by how good it looked, because I was expecting nothing.
Yeah, given that it kind of looked semi-realistic and semi-kind of anime and cartoonish, and like almost simultaneously.
Yeah, so the characters were very anime, whereas the backgrounds in the world were a bit more realistic.
Yeah. And really, just really well rendered. It doesn't look like the kind of game that I'm ever going to play. It made me think of Pokemon. It made me think of what people want Pokemon to be in the future, even like what we were saying recently recently about Pokemon Arceus and what that should maybe be, this, Pokemon Breath of the Wild, essentially. It does seem to be like an MMO about collecting creatures. They said something about creatures that are powered by the strength of dreams, which just is a great line. And yeah,
as anime as fuck, Liz, I knew it.
I imagine it won't land over here, but I could see it becoming a big thing in other parts of the world where this is a bit more popular,
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think it's definitely aimed much more at the East Asian market than it is aimed at us. But yeah, I mean, it was interesting. It was definitely an interesting thing. I've got to say, very interested to see how that lands. After that, Lewis, was Jurassic World Evolutions 2. This pretty much looked like the original Jurassic World game as far as I'm concerned. It's a city park builder. They're not really much for me, but if that is something that interests you, it is coming on November the 9th. After that was Far Cry 6 and another cinematic trailer, which, to be honest, I really didn't need. They have to stop putting out trailers for this game.
Yep.
We know what it is. I'm just ready for it to come out. But Giancarlo Esposito in every single fucking trailer is a total boss, and he might be the coolest man alive, frankly. Bit of gameplay mixed in there as well. It's coming on October the 8th. I don't really think that there's too much more to say about the game, to be honest with you. I didn't think Ubisoft had much more to say about the game, but clearly I was wrong.
I'm sure they'll find even more to say.
Oh, I'm sure they will. After that was Vampire the Masquerade Blood Hunt. This is the Vampire the Masquerade Battle Royale game that was first shown at Summer Games Fest earlier this year. It wasn't very clear from that trailer, if I'm honest with you, what the game really was. And frankly, I'm not sure it was much clearer after this trailer, to be honest. But there will be early access on September the 7th. And I think that there was maybe like a closed alpha or something like that before this. And it seems as though it's not went down like a ton of bricks. So that's good. After that list was Park Beyond. This is another park builder, and honestly this trailer and the characters annoyed me. They actively annoyed me, but if you're into your park builders and whatever, then go and check it out. It's coming in 2022. Then, Lewis, Jet the Far Shore. This was first shown off at the PS5 reveal event, I believe. It looks very, very atmospheric as a game. I'm still not massively sure what you're doing in the game, like what the primary gameplay loop is, and honestly I'm not sure that they have really sold me on the game yet. It is coming on October the 5th. We now have a release date. I know that you are more interested in it than I was.
Yeah, although I do feel quite similarly to you, I think, after the last few trailers that we've seen, that I'm intrigued. I want to see more. I'll be excited to see reviews and preview pieces properly when they start coming out. But yeah, I still don't, I'm not looking at this and going yes, this is nailed on, I'm going to play it. And it looks like the kind of game that I normally would feel like that about. It looks quite like the Outer Wilds in a lot of ways, yet I am not sold on it yet. And that is a little bit concerning to me, but still keen to see more. It's still got a little bit of cooking time, so we'll see.
After that list was a bit of a surprise, I have to say, Horizon Forbidden West, and this was the reveal of the release date, basically. We're getting Horizon Forbidden West on February the 18th. They also announced that there would be a 6-day FPS patch coming to Horizon Zero Dawn for the PS5, but really the news here is that we now have a release date for Horizon Forbidden West, and I think that beginning part of next year is going to be very, very busy.
Very much so, yeah.
After that was New World. This is the Amazon MMORPG, which is coming on September the 28th, but there is an open beta on September the 9th. We got a cinematic, but this game in reality will live or die on its adoption rate. They really just have to make sure that the content is there when the game drops. Honestly, for what it is, it looks alright. It really does. It looks totally fine. But Amazon have previous year, let's be honest, and they have promised that the game will be supported for years. But again, Amazon have previous year. So, I don't know. What are your thoughts on this?
Similar, to be honest. I do think it looks quite good. I'm quite interested in the world that it's set in and all that kind of stuff. The trailers that we've seen of it so far have kind of caught my attention, but I find it quite hard to get excited about anything that Amazon is doing, but that's a slightly different matter. And yeah, I don't have massive amounts of confidence in their ability to, or their desire, I guess, to actually do this and sustain it. And if it does not hit a huge fan base immediately, will they actually put the work in to grow it, or will they just abandon it?
Well, I think that is the ultimate question there, Liz, and I do not know. Alright, after that we got 2 mobile games, Marvel's Future Revolutions and Tales of Luminaria, which is part of the Tales of series. The Marvel thing is an RPG, and the Tales thing is a JRPG, basically, isn't it? They're both free to play. If you're interested in any of these franchises, go and check it out. I'm not dwelling on mobile games, let's be honest here. After that, might be even a weirder game still, Lewis. A Deadmau5 game? Question mark. This is coming to a platform called Core, which I have heard about before, but don't really know a great deal about, to be honest with you. It seems to be for dicking around and having interactive events similar to Fortnite. Again, question mark, because this trailer did not tell me at all really what this was. Entirely weird. Don't particularly want to dwell on it. Thoughts?
No, zero thoughts. I barely paid any attention to it. I didn't think Deadmau5 was still around. Don't know why he wouldn't just do it in Fortnite, as you say. Yeah.
He's not dead.
No, I know, but is he still making music? Is he still performing?
Yeah.
It's the first time I've heard his name in years.
Alright, okay, fair enough. After that, Lewis, was a Fall Guys update, and this was basically just partnering with Disney to bring Jungle Book characters to the game, which is pretty cool, but not a major event, let's be honest. After that was Replace, which was first shown off at the Xbox Games Showcase earlier this year, or maybe that was their E3 event, actually. This, actually, it looks fantastic, very cyberpunky, side-scroller, has a great look to it, but this announcement was basically just to tell you what the song in the trailer was, it looked like, which was very, very strange. After that, Lewis, was Age of Empires 4. This time we did get a bit of gameplay, and it's coming on October the 8th, as we previously mentioned, at the Xbox Showcase. Not going to dwell on that one too much. Then we got Valheim Hearth and Home Update. This game obviously absolutely blew up for a bit in the early part of the summer, with over 500,000 concurrent players on Steam. This update focuses on base building and survival. Really nice animated trailer, I have to say.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And it's coming on September the 16th. But Lewis, after that, Sifu. Now, this is a game that I know that you are interested in. This has been on various PlayStation showcases and is by Slowclap. Got another look at the insane gameplay. I think that a lot more people are more interested in this than me, including yourself. I'm still a bit on the fence about it, but we do now have a release date of the 22nd of February, which is very, very close to Horizon now.
Yeah, it does feel like it's going to be a busy February. For me, this is the first time we saw it, I thought it looked interesting. It's an unusual type of game. It looks like it has sort of roguelike elements. It's got brawler elements, and it's kind of vibing on that martial arts film kind of scene, I guess.
Yeah, totally.
I'm interested in it. I do think that they might be showing a little bit too much of what I suspect is going to be quite a short or small game. So I hope that they don't ruin that by including it in every single showcase that happens between now and February. But good to have that date and the confirmation that it is still coming soon, even though it got delayed, you know? Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, obviously we got the announcement that it was delayed. I think that we got 2 trailers before that, then we got the announcement that it was delayed. Now we've got this, so it probably does feel like a wee bit more than they were perhaps planning.
Yeah,
but
that's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair.
I totally, I get the point though. I definitely get the point. And the one last thing, Lewis, was Death Stranding Director's Cut, which, to be honest with you, was a bit of a weak one last thing because we already know about this game, Lewis. This was announced back at Summer Games Fest earlier in the year. We got a deep look at the game, introducing new items and new equipment, new facilities, which basically seemed to be the VR missions portion of it, you know, for lack of a better term. They also were introducing new weapons, and they were putting a system in place whereby you could play any of the bosses anytime that you wanted, and there also seems to be a rankings boards for everything now, it seemed. But most importantly, Lewis, there will be new missions, which I think really is why most people will be getting this update, will be getting this updated version of the game. They are also introducing a racing mode, which, to be honest with you, I think looks dreadful. I don't really know why they've bothered with that. I mean, all of this to me looked pretty good, but again, similarly to a lot of the criticisms that I was levelling at the Xbox presentation, I don't think that this was the place for a deep dive on Death Stranding Director's Cut. If PlayStation wanted to put out a spotlight thing on Death Stranding Director's Cut and really dive into a bunch of this stuff, fine. I don't really think this is the moment for that, you know what I mean? And it felt a bit out of place here. Pretty weak final ending, but I actually think that all the stuff added to the game is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think what we were seeing there is the Kojima star power really kind of taking sway. It was Kojima's birthday this week. We should say happy birthday to old Hideo.
Happy birthday, Hideo.
But yeah, it does feel a lot like it was Jeff Keighley pulling in a favour from a pal and, you know, attaching this to the end. A lot of the details that we saw had already been announced or explained or even shown in the original announcement trailer, and we got a deeper look at some of them. Like, I agree, I think it looks really good. I think what they've added to it is going to bring in not just people looking for the new missions, but I think it will bring people into the game who avoided it the first time, because there's some quality of life improvements there, and there's some things that make it look like the traversal will be a bit more fun. So there's a kind of jetpack looking thing, or at least a sort of
that was cool
glidery element, and then there's the the buddy bot, whatever he's called, that will carry stuff for you, or even carry Sam himself. I think those are the kinds of additions that players who bounced off it hard the first time, or who looked at it and thought, no, I'm not getting involved in this, might come into it for. I'm really excited. I think it was a well put together trailer, and the new additions look really cool. I'm keen to see the new missions. I'm never ever going to play those boss fights again, though, ever. But yeah, I do basically agree that we didn't really need as much of this here as we did get. I think a tighter trailer for the experience, with maybe one big announcement about like the core of the new missions or something, could have worked just as well.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, those are the two big showcases of Gamescom. Thoughts on them overall?
Kind of as we said before, like not expecting masses and masses from Gamescom and from Opening Night Live. Might have expected a little more than we got from the Xbox showcase, but it just is what it is. They put together some decent stuff. We got updates on some games. We got some new games and some reveals and some new trailers that were alright. I'm not blown away, but that's just the year that it's been as well. Like, I don't think we can really expect a great deal more than what we've seen here.
No, to be honest with you, Liz, I think that's a pretty fair assessment. And I know I was coming down a wee bit hard on Xbox, but I think really both of them were sort of fine. I thought it was weird that they did the Halo announcement on Opening Night Live and not at their own showcase, though. I thought that was bizarre. But otherwise, I think that this is basically what we were expecting. Nothing earth-shattering, but a couple of good announcements in there, updates on games, you know what I mean? It was fine. It was fine. And on that, Liz, I think it's time for a beer, and then we'll be back with Topic of the Week. And we are back for Topic of the Week. Topic of the Week this week is our play-along of Bury Me, My Love. Bury Me, My Love is a text message adventure game by Pixel Hunt Studios. The entire game is basically just you receiving and sending text messages between you, who is Majd, you play the character of Majd, who is the husband of Noor, who is a Syrian migrant who is trying to escape the Syrian civil war that happened in recent years, which led to the Syrian refugee crisis, and she was one of said refugees, or supposed to be one of said refugees. It's worth pointing out as well that the game is sort of based loosely on real life events. According to their Steam page, the original idea for the game stemmed from a Le Monde journalist who wrote a story about Dana, a young Syrian woman who fled the country and is now living in Germany. This is a bit of an interesting one to do because we can't really speak about art style or anything like that. The game sort of is the form of a sort of text adventure, for lack of a better term, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in terms of art style, it's a stylized WhatsApp conversation with, it does have some nice illustrations within it. There's moments, particularly quite early on, where you get sent photos within the game that are actually they look like
sketchy
illustrations,
which do have a nice art style.
Absolutely, yeah.
Obviously, as well, it uses the form of a phone. The fact that it's on a mobile to great effect. It very much simulates, I think, relatively well, getting and receiving messages from someone over the course of a few days. I don't really know how long it took you to finish it, but for me, it was like a few days, basically. It's not in of itself terribly original. Like, I know that there is the sort of Lost Phone series of games that do like a similar thing, but this was just quite poignant as well, just because it is sort of loosely based on real life events and was quite hard hitting, I think, because of that. I think that the subject of the game, I think, is actually quite a lot more interesting than the game itself. Is that fair to say? The sort of wider political climate in which the game takes place is significantly more interesting than what you are actually doing in the game,
Yeah, I think that is fair to say. To look quickly first at the actual gameplay, like you say, it's literally just answering text messages, sending your replies.
It's literally just
choosing
dialogue options. Dialogue options, that's exactly what it is. In the format of, yes, you said stylized WhatsApp. That is what it is.
But yeah, the narrative and the context that it's all taking place in, it is, so essentially, for anyone who hasn't played it yet, you play Majd and you are still in Syria, and you are essentially advising your wife Noor, who is trying to leave Syria by sort of various potential means, about the best things to do, or asking her to make her own decisions around it. And there's two things here that I think work really well. There's the kind of horrific context in which it all takes place, and I've got to say, playing it now with the backdrop of the sort of Afghanistan situation, which we sort of referenced recently as being an interesting context in which to play this game, and I have played this before a couple of years ago, but the first night I tried to play this again, I had been listening to the news all day around the Afghanistan crisis, I suppose we can call it now, the situation there, and I found it too difficult and I just turned it off. I was like, I just don't want to be involved in this right now, and I don't often feel that even with political or narrative based games like this, so it does definitely tap into something there.
I have to say, man, can I just say, just on that exact same point, right? I think that one of the first days where I started playing this is when that absolutely horrendous video came out of a huge military plane, I think it was an American military plane, attempting to leave Kabul airport with a runway full of people trying to grab onto the plane as it was taking off, and I was just like, Jesus, this is... It suddenly got too real, you know, so I completely understand that, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of people are playing video games as a form of escapism, as a form of trying to relax, whereas this game very much is like directly, no, we are talking about these very difficult situations for human beings to go through, and right now it has never been more raw for us, you know?
Absolutely. But I think the thing it does really well, particularly the start of the game that is quite raw with that stuff and talks about, you know, the bombs that are falling and their friends that have been affected by the situation, by the war, but the minute to minute, like the banter that you get between husband and wife, I think is actually, it really alleviates some of that, and they feel like absolutely real, normal human beings, and that I think is also really important to what this game is, because it's not trying to make you think of them as these are refugees and they're having a tough old time. It's kind of trying to say to you, like, they're you, man. They are just you, but they are in a war zone.
People in the world. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I say it a lot on this podcast, and I think that they feel so human, these interactions that they're having with one another. Do you know what I mean? And I think that if you can capture that in your game, if you can capture that in any media, frankly, I think that's a sign of like pretty good writing, and that you've sort of nailed it pretty hard. Like, as you were saying, like the sort of back and forth between the two of them about totally innocuous things sometimes, of course. And I think that's also part of it, the fact that it's not just constant conversation about, oh, what's next. Of course, that's a big part of it. Obviously, that's a big part of it. But just like a wee bit of banter about nothing at all is just like, oh, well, that humanises this whole situation. It humanises these characters. That it does say, this woman is just like you, as you were saying, like, there for the grace of God, go I, basically. You know what I mean? It's just a horrible situation that these people find themselves in, and because of that are subject to really horrible conditions and trying to escape somewhere where they very well might die, going through a whole series of events where they very well might die, to end up in somewhere where they might get thrown out and put back to the place where they very well might die. It's really a horrifyingly real story right now, you know?
Yeah, 100% that, and I think that did lend the game a lot more power than the first time I played it. It was, you know, I was seeing it all in this context again, and I think what it does really well, like thinking of it as a game first and foremost, I think it does force you to role play in really interesting ways. Playing as Majd, you are often asked for advice. When you get dialogue options in a lot of games, Mark, it's pretty clear what is going to happen.
Good option, bad option, neutral
good option, bad option, or, you know, the option that will send the character left and the option that will send them right. You know, I mean, you can generally see through it all. But the way that this game works is that often you're looking at two options just thinking, well, I have absolutely no fucking idea what the better option here is. Like, do I tell her to go and get the bus from Beirut, or do I tell her to try and get to the border? Well, like me sitting here in Scotland, I don't have a sense of the geography. I don't have a good sense of the topology of the war as it's going on. Like, there's certain cities that get mentioned that you think, I remember that being on the news. Don't go there.
Yeah, exactly. And that again is great, although it doesn't mollycoddle you in any way when it comes to that stuff. It's just like, no, this is a naturalistic conversation about how these people would talk about this area of the world, because they are very familiar with that area of the world and you aren't.
Yeah, and it makes your decisions, because you know that your decisions are going to have an effect on whether or not Noor makes it or survives or how well she does on her journey. That decision, when you think about yourself as, and I was trying to think about it as I was playing it, thinking, what would I be saying to my actual real life partner in this kind of situation? Like, there's times where it's maybe a bit of banter about nothing much. Like, there's a bit quite near the start where Noor blames you, Majd, for having not woken up, because normally you would wake her up because she's a heavy sleeper. And it's kind of, your options are basically to say, like, really essentially, like, shut up, I've got nothing to do with this, or to kind of apologise. And I was playing it thinking, well, in that scenario, thinking about how stressed my partner would be, I wouldn't want to put it back on them. I would take the blame for that, even knowing it's absurd. Obviously, it's nothing to do with me. But that, to me, is quite an in-depth level of role-playing to get to for a game that is basically, very rudimentary in terms of its mechanics. And I was impressed by that, I've got to say, because it could very easily just be really didactic, really just making a political point and not really investing you in the characters. But I did feel like every time I've tried to have a playthrough of this, I've tried to think about it as a real husband to a real person trying to escape a situation like this, with all the fucking confusion and horror that comes with.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it would be very easy as well. Like, I like that point that you brought up there as well, is that this game is political, you know what I mean? Like, it's highly political, I would go so far as to say. But this is a story about Majd and Noor. It's not making a blunt political point, do you know what I mean? It takes place in a highly politicised world, a real thing that actually happened, But the game remains about Majd and Noor. It remains about the characters. While through our interaction with those characters, we learn a lot about the world, a lot of horrific things about the world and what refugees have gone through and are still going through literally right now in the world. It always comes back to the characters. It always comes back to their story. You know what I mean? And I think that is a very good way to make your political points. Do you know what I mean? Just generally speaking in media, like, it can be very heavy-handed. You can see a certain subsection of the internet being like, oh, get the fucking politics out of video games and all that absolute horseshit. But this is a way to do that very, very well, I think. Like, you're taking on a huge political subject here, and you've dealt with it really respectfully, and you've dealt with it in a way where it is still about those characters. It's still about the story that you're telling. It's not directly about the political situation, although we learn a lot about that political situation. I hope that made sense. Did that make sense?
I think it did, yeah, absolutely. That, like, it's not... I mean, I can't even remember if it tells you what side of the civil war that they're on, and it's kind of...
I don't think it does. I mean, I think if they're a refugee fleeing to Europe, you can kind of guess what side of the war that they're on, but no, I don't think they bluntly say it.
Exactly.
No.
Like, it's masked in a way that... I mean, I hope that that's not to try and kind of pander to people who would level those criticisms, because they're not likely to play this game anyway.
No, I don't think that this game is very interested in pandering to people that don't agree with what they're talking about because of the subject that they're talking about. You know what I mean? They're the way that they've dealt with that so well, and they're not trying to both sides this. They're trying to be like, no, these are human beings who deserve respect and do not deserve to go through these fucking conditions if they want to not die.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, it's like not actually about the war itself. It's literally just about getting out. It doesn't matter who's dropping the bombs. It's the story of trying to escape a horrendous situation. And that, you could transplant this game in a lot of ways to, like, mainland Europe in the 40s during the Second World War. It could be a story about...
Any warless.
Yeah,
any
war. And at its root, it is a story told, as you say, not like totally unique, but in an interesting way for a game where it's just a conversation, and it's a really simplistically interactive conversation to have, but that draws you into the plight of two people, and one person in particular. I mean, Noor is definitely the one suffering most of the time.
Yeah.
Some of the endings I've had are really quite difficult to deal with in a sense, because you have grown attached to her. Those being negative endings, obviously. I think there's 19 potential outcomes I read the other day. I've not even scratched the surface on most of those, but having not loved it the very first time I played it, or not loved it as much as I thought I might, I think this time I played a wee bit more with some of the controls that you can have in it. So the game, by its default state, plays in real time, and you wait for your phone to give you like a text style notification every few hours when she texts. But you can speed that up to basically be as soon as, if you're interacting with the game, the messages keep coming. And similarly, you can change the text speed so that you're not waiting for her to type, but the messages just appear instantly. So if you're someone who wants to experience this but doesn't because certainly the first time I played it, I found it a bit of a drag after a while. This time I sped it up a wee bit and played between those two settings quite a lot, and I just thought that meant you could get the kind of horror and the intensity of the story, but without, like you said, at this time it took you days to finish it. I've just not had days to play it over, so I wanted to speed certain bits up, and for anyone thinking that is too much for them, that could be a good way to get into it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I must admit that I actually really liked that part of the game.
I like it too, I should say, but I just couldn't this time.
No, I totally get you. Your circumstances are difficult just now to play games, and I fully appreciate that. But I actually thought that was quite an important part of it to a certain extent, that it does take place over days, because in reality this takes place over like a week or something. No, longer than that.
Depends.
It
Depends how well you do it.
Depends on how far you get. Yeah, that's true. But like, say it's like a couple of weeks or whatever, and you could potentially be playing the game for not a couple of weeks, although I don't know, maybe it does take long, all said and done, but you could be playing it for a few days anyway, and the fact that it does take place over quite a long period of time, I think is actually quite important. Like refugees, like when refugees in Britain here, like when a refugee starts to live here, they might have began the journey of beginning to live here months ago. They've had to go through God knows how many countries, done God knows of how many illegal things, depending on the country, depending on their situation with refugees, depending on whether or not they are accommodating any refugees or not, just to arrive somewhere. Do you know what I mean? And it's not just that they've all just shown up on your doorstep all of a sudden or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? It's been an incredibly hard and difficult journey for most of these people to actually get to seek asylum somewhere, you know? Yeah, I thought actually, again, I think with the current situation in Afghanistan going on now, and Jesus Christ, I just feel so bad for all those people trying to get out of there. It's a horrendous situation. But with that backdrop, I think playing something like this really hit home way harder. Yeah, it really did.
100% it did, yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we'll have to call it a day there. I'd like to remind everyone that you can find PlayersToo on all the social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com. That's PlayerSToo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, it really, really, really helps us out. There's a huge amount for the exposure of the show. I know I say it twice a week, every single week, but it does not become less important on a weekly basis. If you could take that time to give us 5 stars, give us a little review, it really does mean a huge amount to us, and thank you so much to anyone that's already done that for us. It's now time to announce our play-along game for this month, which will be Little Nightmares, and the play-along game for the following month will be Little Nightmares 2. So if there's any deals going on where you can get both of those games cheap in a little bundle or something, that's what we're going to be doing. So by the time that we've finished Little Nightmares, it will be the start of October, obviously into the month of Halloween, and by the time that we are recording Little Nightmares 2, that will be round about Halloween as well, slightly after probably. So that was the thinking there. Also worth mentioning at this point that we will be having a sort of special episode next week, which is a bit of fun, to be honest with you. I am hoping to be on holiday at that time, nothing abroad, just away for a bit, just away from my flat, which I have been locked in far too much over the past year, Liz. So that's why that's happening. So we're taking a little break. Obviously, Lewis is still incredibly busy with work, so I think that's probably welcome on his end as well. But we'll be doing a sort of special episode next week. After that, we'll be back to normal billings, hopefully, because Lewis's work situation will have changed by then. But at the same time, some family stuff has cropped up for me, so I really don't know what's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. But after the first couple of weeks in September, it's plain sailing. It's plain sailing all the way to Christmas, I promise you.
Yeah, just bear with us. August is always a particularly tricky month for me.
August is a goddamn nightmare.
Yeah, it's fair piling up for both of us at the moment, so we will be back to normal very soon. We will. But next week's show, I had a lot of fun doing it, and I think that the listeners will really enjoy it, or I hope they do at least, so yeah.
I hope they do as well, man. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it as well. It was a fun episode. I do also have to say that none of this is indicative of anything bad at all. It's just a particularly difficult and stressful time for us right now. Going forward, it should all be much smoother, ladies and gentlemen. Good. It should all be much smoother. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next week.
Thanks.